This is for Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. This is not just a war over stolen land. Why do you think little boys are throwing stones at tanks? And we'll never really know how many people are dead. They drop bombs on innocent girls while they sleep in their bed. Israel is a terror state, they're terrorists that terrorize. I'll testify my television, televise them telling lies. How many more resolutions have to be violated? How many more children have to be annihilated? This is not a war, it is systematic genocide. But whatever they try, Palestine will never die. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Hello, I'm Chris Williamson, and this is Palestine Declassified, where we provide an in-depth analysis of the Zionist entity's criminal behaviour and the effort it puts into influencing international policymakers and global public opinion. In today's show, we'll be revealing the Zionist links to the opposition in Venezuela, where successive governments, after Hugo Chavez came to power in 1998, have lent their support to Palestine and the Axis of Resistance. In 2009, Venezuela expelled Israel's ambassador and broke off all diplomatic ties with the Zionist colony. The current Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, says the Palestinian resistance is engaged in what he describes as a critical battle against fascism and colonialism. That's why the revolutionary Venezuelan government is a beacon of anti-imperialism and a symbol of solidarity with the Palestinian people, as Latif Abu-Chaka will explain in our first report.
The US empire is moving on Venezuela as part of its over 25-year attempt to overthrow the revolutionary Venezuelan government, which is firmly anti-imperialist and anti-Zionist. In addition to its interest in Venezuela's vast oil reserves, the US has long been concerned about its close relationship with Russia, China, and Iran, in addition to its strong support for the Palestinian cause. During his time in office, former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez denounced the Zionist entity on numerous occasions, particularly during the Second Intifada, the 2006 war in Lebanon, and Israel's 2009 offensive on Gaza. In 2009, he even expelled the Zionist ambassador from Venezuela and cut off diplomatic relations with the entity. Chavez also forged close ties with Iran, signing deals with its government for energy, economic, and industrial cooperation. He condemned US sanctions on Iran, supported its nuclear program, and visited Iran on multiple occasions, praising the two countries' brotherly anti-imperialist alliance. His successor, Nicolas Maduro, has continued in the same way, and following October the 7th, he has continuously and strongly condemned Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza and Lebanon, calling Netanyahu the Hitler of the 21st century. He has also spoken against the Zionist influence in Washington, saying, "Is Netanyahu in charge of the US? Or is the US in charge of Netanyahu? I believe that the Zionists govern the US. They command the White House, the Congress, the media, and social media." On the other hand, the Venezuelan opposition has a long history of ties and collaboration with the Zionist regime. The current opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, even made a pact with Netanyahu's Likud party in 2020. They signed a cooperation agreement that promised a strategic alliance in political, ideological, and security matters, designed to rebuild relations between the two countries. Machado also pledged to relocate Venezuela's embassy to Jerusalem if she becomes president. After October the 7th, 2023, Machado's support for the Zionist entity has only grown. She has condemned the so-called terrorism of Hamas. And in October 2025, after she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, she had a phone call with Netanyahu in which she welcomed the release of Zionist captives from Gaza and praised Israel's actions against Iran. While the attempt at regime change in Venezuela is clearly about the US getting its hands on Venezuelan oil, it's clear that the Zionists are also deeply invested in eradicating the pro-Palestine and pro-Iranian politics of the Venezuelan government.
As usual, I'm joined in the studio by David Miller, who's the UK's foremost scholarly critic of Israel and our resident expert. He's a co-director of the lobbying watchdog Spinwatch and a Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Zayem University. Our guest contributor today is Oliver Dodd, who's an academic based at Liverpool John Moores University. He lectures in international relations and security studies with a regional focus on Latin America. His research has explored the political economy of armed conflict, insurgency and peace processes, with a particular interest in how local experiences of war intersect with global structures of power and capitalism. Welcome to the show. David, is the United States aiming to kill two birds with one stone here? I mean, on the one hand, gaining access to Venezuela's huge oil reserves, and on the other, crushing a pro-Palestine government.
Well, of course, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, the oil which they would get access to, of course, would be given mostly to Exxon, which doesn't currently have access to Venezuelan oil, and so that would be a major plus for the US. And of course, also, they want to crush a government which supports the Palestinians, one of the few in Latin America which has supported the Palestinians, not the only one. And of course, that's what they want to do. They also, of course, see Venezuela as a threat, and they want to get access to the oil in order also to undermine other oil suppliers, for example, the Russians, which of course we've seen in Europe in the last couple of years, where they attempt to smash German oil contracts with the Russians. So all of that is part of the big picture.
Yeah, and what do you make of this ruse that Donald Trump is using, claiming that Nicolas Maduro is some sort of a narco-terrorist?
Well, I mean, the biggest narco-terrorists in the world are, of course, the US. They're the ones who oversaw the heroin trade in Afghanistan. And, of course, the narco-terrorist story is just the latest lies from the US, like the Iraqi WMDs, isn't it?
Indeed, another kind of example, really, of projection. You know, every accusation is an admission in reality. But Oliver, I mean, how central would you say the Palestinian cause is to the identity of Venezuela's Bolivarian revolution?
I would say it's very much central. There's always been a natural sympathy between Chavismo, the Bolivarian revolution, and Palestine, partly because of the way in which Palestine is it's a key pillar of anti-imperial resistance globally. Venezuela, of course, has also been a victim of imperialist aggression, imperial violence over many decades and years. So these sympathies with the Palestinian resistance have really formed as part of the identity of the Bolivarian Revolution, really captured what the Bolivarian Revolution is about, which is solidarity with resistance to imperial aggression internationally.
Well, David, why do you think so-called pro-democracy opposition leaders in Venezuela openly ally themselves with Netanyahu? I mean, we've seen this trend, haven't we, with other right-wing figures across Latin America?
Yeah, I mean, the most pro-Israel of the Latin American countries is, of course, presently is Argentina, where Milei appears to be a fully paid-up Zionist. I mean, it doesn't seem to. It's even said that by some people he's converted to Judaism. So that's a trend, and of course the Israelis have historically supplied weapons to military dictatorships in Latin America to undermine popular movements. But what you also see here is that this is partly an attempt to show the US that they are loyal. So you show the US that you're loyal to the US by being loyal to Zionism, which is an indication really of the way in which Zionism looms large in the foreign policy of the US.
Sort of intimidated then into the situation rather than necessarily being ideologically aligned, or is it a bit of both, do you think?
Well, I mean, who is convinced by the Zionists? Nobody. I mean, the intimidation is one of their major cards, isn't it? Blackmail, intimidation, bribery. That's essential to Zionist foreign policy.
Right, okay. Well, Oliver, I mean, what do you make of Maria Corina Machado being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, despite her support for the Gaza genocide, I mean, she's even called on Donald Trump to step up his military campaign against her own country, hasn't she?
Well, this shows how empty the word peace actually is for the so-called Nobel Peace Prize Committee. This has really been exposed as part of a Western game for many years. The Nobel Peace Prize was, of course, given to Henry Kissinger, who was a supporter of imperial violence and genocide. We've also seen other people receive the prize who have also been engaged in highly aggressive imperial activities, such as Barack Obama. The Nobel Peace Prize is about rewarding loyalty to Western power. Machado, of course, supports sanctions, regime change, and Israel's genocide on Gaza and the Palestinians. She's spoken out publicly in advance of the Israeli genocide. And this isn't peace. This is about managing imperial violence. It's about rewarding loyalty to those who support the West imperial project. Atrocities by the West are overlooked by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, as has been the case with Machado, whereas resistance to the imperial Western project is criminalized, and the Nobel Peace Prize has always been part of that aim.
Well, David, we heard in the film there, didn't we, that Maduro believes the Zionists control the United States, not the other way around. I mean, what does that tell us? I mean, it's a point, actually, that you and I and this show has been making for some time, isn't it?
Well, Maduro is one of the world's great anti-imperialist leaders. Very vanishingly few number that they are present, and that's his view. And when he says things like that, and he says they control the Congress, they control the media. These are things which we observe in reality. The media is absolutely, in terms of ownership and in terms of the messages given out by the mainstream media, very, very pro-Zionist. It's the same in Congress. Both sides of the congressional aisle, and the Democrats and the Republicans, all of them support the Zionists, with a handful of exceptions, which we've mentioned previously in the show, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. And so it's very visible that politics in the UK, the US, and other places is extremely pro-Zionist. That anyone says anything against Zionism, even a mild criticism, is immediately stamped on. They're hounded out of their jobs. Their media corporations are taken over by the Zionists, and so it's perfectly clear that that's what's happening. But many on the left in the West continue to believe that it can't be true.
Sure, yeah, indeed. Well, Oliver, I mean, if Maduro were overthrown, do you think it's likely that Venezuela would instantly have friendly relations with Israel?
Absolutely. What we're seeing in Venezuela currently isn't some democratic awakening on the part of the Venezuelan people. This is a proxy opposition, a US Western-backed proxy opposition that is fundamentally trying to roll back all the progressive anti-imperialist policies that have been developed in Venezuela over recent years and decades. It would be an immediate condition of any new Venezuelan government that was to emerge through the opposition to form strong links with Israel, to continue to support the strangulation of the Palestinians. The foreign policy would be realigned with Washington, and solidarity with the Palestinians would be dropped almost immediately. So this is really the support for the opposition to regime change in Venezuela is all part of solidarity with the Palestinians.
Well, our next report uncovers the material ways in which the Zionist entity stands to gain from regime change in Venezuela.
The U.S. empire is tightening its grip on Venezuela's economy, and a whole range of Zionists, including Israel itself, stand to benefit. Two U.S. oil giants, Chevron and ExxonMobil, are vital to the Zionist energy industry. Chevron is the only major U.S. oil company still operating inside Venezuela, extracting more than 220,000 barrels of oil per day. ExxonMobil plays its own role. The company supplies roughly 8% of Israel's crude oil imports, but the corporation stopped production in Venezuela in 2007 after former President Hugo Chavez renegotiated Exxon's oil contracts. Exxon would be one of the greatest beneficiaries of regime change in Venezuela. The privatization of Venezuela's oil industry could see the country's current production and export rates skyrocket, meaning there is a high likelihood that the Zionist entity would be a recipient of cheap Venezuelan crude oil, with corporations like Chevron and Exxon reaping the profits. Argentina's President Javier Milei, who declared himself a Zionist and moved his country's embassy to Jerusalem, openly supports Exxon's claims against Venezuela. But it's not just American oil giants whose profits would soar from regime change. The use of private military contractors with documented Zionist ties are also circling. Eric Prince, founder of Blackwater, has built a large portfolio of Zionist contacts over many decades. In 2019, he proposed an invasion of Venezuela with 5,000 mercenaries. After October 7th, Prince suggested flooding tunnels used by the Palestinian resistance in Gaza with seawater, and he has been a key node in U.S.-Israel private security pipelines, with ties to Israel's intelligence and military communities. In October 2025, Venezuelan authorities revealed that Prince's latest front company, Yakasi Venezuela, collected over $1.2 million from opposition exiles for anti-Maduro operations. The influx of U.S. and Zionist mercenary and security companies into Venezuela would not only have economic benefits for Israel, but it would also see the country used as a launchpad against Israel's enemies in the region, building pressure against Latin American solidarity with Palestine. Venezuela's neighbor Colombia is currently led by President Gustavo Petro, who has called for an international military alliance to end the Gaza genocide and has blocked vital coal exports to the Zionist entity. Venezuela's allies, Nicaragua and Cuba, have also taken a staunchly pro-Palestine stance and remain targets of U.S. regime change themselves. It's clear that the overthrow of Venezuela's government would help to isolate other anti-imperialist countries in the region and consolidate Zionist global hegemony.
Well, David, why do you think mercenaries like Eric Prince, target both Venezuela and the Palestinian resistance?
Well, because the people who will fund them are the same people. It's the US, it's the Zionists themselves. And that's always been the way in which these things work. That's why, in the past, the Zionists have supplied arms to the apartheid regime, to the death squads in Latin America, in Argentina, for example, in the Dirty War. So that there's a long history of this. And we've seen in many other countries that the Zionist weapons end up in the hands, for example, of the Azov battalion in Ukraine, the Nazi Azov battalion. So this is all part of the kind of the black industry of death squads and mercenaries. They're strongly aligned with the Zionists as well as with the U.S. military industrial complex.
This is just a feature, then, it seems, is it, of Zionism? This sort of addiction to war and destruction.
Well, Zionism is as we've been saying, is fundamentally racist. It's a fundamentally colonial ideology, and of course, it's trying to expand beyond its current borders into what it calls Greater Israel, and then, of course, to the West Asia region, and indeed beyond that, as we've been saying on this show.
And it kind of uses mercenaries along the way to help them in that goal. But Oliver, isn't it at least part of the regime change attempts in Venezuela about crushing Latin American solidarity with Palestine?
Yes, very much so. This is all part of a wider imperial strategy of trying to discipline movements that have spoken out publicly, have shown solidarity with the Palestinians in their resistance to Israel's settler colonialism and genocide. Venezuela is really a key beacon of that solidarity with the Palestinians. And it's also been an important beacon in Latin America itself, showing solidarity and support with other progressive governments like Colombia and Cuba that are also key to showing the Palestinians' solidarity in resistance to genocide. So this regime change in Venezuela is all part of sending a more regional and international warning defiance will be punished.
Well, David, do you think that toppling Maduro would help the Zionists to isolate Iran and indeed the broader anti-imperialist axis?
Well, of course. I mean, it would harm the Palestinian resistance because they provide support, not just rhetorical support to the Palestinian resistance and to the axis of resistance more widely. And of course, as we've seen with the collapse in Syria, where the ISIS government has taken over, backed by Israel and backed by the US and indeed the UK, that obviously materially weakens the axis of resistance. And you would see the same in Latin America, not just in terms of support for Palestine, but support of the other anti-imperialist countries and leftist countries there, Colombia, we saw the film there, Nicaragua, Cuba, all of which have been critical of the Zionists.
Right, okay. Well, Oliver, I mean, you have particular expertise on Colombia. Given Colombia's long history as a US stooge, how significant is it that President Petro has resisted calls to support a US attack on Venezuela? I mean, it seems pretty historic to me.
It is historic. Colombia, of course, has been the major ally of the United States and Israel in Latin America historically. Really, no president in the history of Colombia has shown such solidarity with the Palestinians as the current president of Colombia has. So it's a major break with the past in the fact that Petro has outright rejected military intervention into Venezuela. But I think this is partly learning the lessons from Colombia's own history, the way in which both the United States and Israel have played a strong role in fomenting repression and violent activities, support for paramilitary death squads. So it's only natural that a president who was broken from the oligarchy would ultimately not only show solidarity with the Palestinians, but push back against the US regime change operation against Venezuela.
Well, David, I mean, if Maduro falls, I mean, do you think it's likely that cheap Venezuelan oil will simply flow into the Zionist entity?
Not straightforwardly. I mean, the oil which the Zionists use is light crude, and the Venezuelan oil is largely heavy crude, so it wouldn't flow directly. But of course, what would happen is that Exxon would get in there. They were kicked out, of course, by Chavez, and that would be a huge benefit to them. Now, Exxon, of course, as we saw in the film there, they supply 8% of the Zionist oil at present through Kazakhstan. And of course, they would endeavour to use their leverage in the Venezuelan market to increase their support to the Zionists. But let's remember also that Exxon supplies jet fuel to the Zionists as part of the war machine. But also the key thing about Exxon as a company is that it's quite different from some companies like BP and Shell, which are not based in the US, in the sense that it relies on support from the US government. And it means that it can be much more of an extreme supporter, for example, of Zionism than other companies.
Sure, right, okay. Well, Oliver, I mean, we know the United States has tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government for over 25 years now. I mean, do you think they have a better chance of succeeding this time?
It's no secret that the United States is very much set on trying to bring about regime change in Venezuela. They're doing it in an unprecedented fashion, so openly. Not even their own people in the United States take seriously this idea that Maduro is a member of a drug cartel. This is really going back to the way in which the United States has operated in Latin America for many years, trying to foment regime change in its own interest. The reality, however, is that the military has proven solid as a rock in Venezuela, showed loyalty. The opposition lacks credibility, as I indicated earlier. It can be seen very much as a foreign proxy. And the United States is overstretched globally, wanting to dominate and control the Middle East, wanting to push back against the rise of China. And it's really all part of this global imperial project that is weakening internationally. The reality is regime change only really works when it's organic and local. But what we see in Venezuela is very much a foreign proxy unleashed as part of the US and Western-led hybrid operations internationally.
Well, that's all we've got time for today, so I'd like to thank our guest, Oliver Dodd. If you want to see more of our content, you can follow the show on X, Facebook, Rumble and Telegram. And make a date to join us on Palestine Declassified next week, when I'll be back alongside David Miller again with more revelations and information that you won't find in the corporate media. But until then, this is Chris Williamson saying bye for now.